Morning all. Just want to see if I can just check. We're looking for Robbie to have joined us to discuss the app. Robbie, are you with us yet? Let's list everybody here. No? And well, hopefully he will join us shortly. So good morning, everybody. We've got quite a lot to get through, so I will make a start today. So we have launched the app for capturing the existing actions that have taken place, and Robbie was just going to run us through again. So I'll give him a minute to join us. Louise, can you keep an eye on joiners, please, and let me know if Robbie arrives if I don't notice, please. Thanks. Thank you. But what I'll do then is I will move on to the next item and we can come back to the app. So I'm also very glad to say that we have launched the APIB maps. And I thought I'd just maybe show everybody, go back to one of the informatics that we've been using previously on the development of the LNRS, just to give you an idea of how these things all fit together, because can you see that? I think it might get a bit confusing otherwise. So is that showing all right? Visible? Someone give me a thumbs up. Michaela, you're on my screen for some reason. Yeah. So if you can see it, tell me. Okay. So just to sort of talk you through all of these different things that we're working on and where they fit in, if you remember this kind of diagram about how the LNRS is developed. So the maps that we've published and we'll have a look at in a minute are the APIB. So those areas of particular importance for biodiversity, and the criteria for that is defined by DEFRA. And one of the papers that you got in the with the agenda is the document that sets out how those are defined. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. And then we've launched this app, which is to map the areas where action for nature recovery has already been taken. So we'll have a look at that in a minute. Then I'll just skip over to the right here. So, you know, we've been doing workshops over the last few weeks, and we've got one more next week. And we've also got some draft work done on the strategy area. And there's the species tag that's looking to develop the species long list. So all of that work, which is looking at the pressures and the priorities for nature, will all come together in these steps to describe our priorities and the pressures that we're trying to respond to through the LNRS. So that's kind of all work either done or work in progress. And then we will move on in May to some more workshops where we'll be looking to review the shortlist, which will be developed from the workshops we've just been doing. And then I'd like to discuss with you how we can engage farmers and landowners a bit more in these. But that's kind of an overview of all the bits, because I don't know about you, but I find it a little bit difficult to understand how all of this is fitting together. So we're making progress, and we are we're getting through all of those. So I'll just pause there just in case anybody has any questions before I go on to have a look at the APIBs. Any questions? Okay, so I'll come out of that, and I will then share the APIBs. Has anybody had a chance to have a look at the APIBs? No? Okay, so there's a couple of things which, again, I can probably talk you through. So let's have a look at the definition of the APIBs, first of all. So this is a document that you've got in your pack, but it sets out the criteria that we needed to follow to which is provided by the statutory guidance in order to map these areas. So as you can see, it lists there all the conservation sites, local nature reserve, others areas of importance for biodiversity. Then it goes on to irreplaceable habitat. And there's a whole explanation here of how those have been developed. So just sorry, it's not helping me with that. Can't see what I'm trying to share. But then with the Kent Wildlife Trust's help, they've done an awful lot of mapping, and I'm showing you, there are PDF versions, but the minute I showed that to any landowner, the first thing they wanted to do was zoom in and see where their land was. So in order to do that, you need to be on the full detailed map. So there's a link to that in the chat, but this is what it looks like. I've got all the data layers clicked on here. So if I take off some of them, you'll see how it changes. Take off the coastal ones, water bodies. But you can see by clicking on the various layers how it's all built up. So I suggest you spend a bit of time having a look at all of that. And yeah, obviously there's a lot to sort of look at, but hopefully, especially if you go onto this detailed map version, you'll be able to see how they're all built up. And again, all of these definitions, the details are set out for why they're in there in that accompanying document. So any thoughts, questions, observations? No? Everyone, what do people think landowners will make of all of this, being able to see all of this together? Be happy? Interested to see where they are in relation to local wildlife sites, or wondering whether that's got any benefits? Anthony?
I just think that I think it's very useful. I think people find it very valuable. Do remember that it's information overload with BNG going on and the amount of SFIs going on and everything else, and stewardship renewals and so on and so forth. So landowners and farmers are going to take a while to absorb and understand a lot of this and what's going on and how it relates to each other. And there's so many specific matters going on, as I said, with BNG and everything else. Even someone who's been in the game all this time, I'm finding it a bit overwhelming to get my head around it all. So I won't be the only one, I think.
Yeah. No, I'm sure that's true, Anthony, and I think that's, really when we come on to talk about how to engage landowners, farmers a bit more, I think that's the real issue, isn't it? There's such so much information coming at them. It's hard to keep up. So yeah, I think that they're published. Obviously, there's an opportunity to have a look at them. So please do, and let us. Well, they are defined by the regulations, so I'm not sure that there's much that we can do about them, but certainly let us have any feedback about how to make them as accessible as possible and easily understood. All that kind of stuff would be really helpful. Great. All right. So I think then I will move on. Do we have Robbie yet or not? No, Robbie. I shall fearlessly go on to look at it in any case. Then this is the Actions for Nature app, which I'll just bring up. So again, this has been launched officially, and we are also hoping to produce a little webinar, which Peter Hall and Gemma Hall very kindly helped us to make, and I think there'll be some other examples on for community groups and other groups. So it's anybody who's had a project, local wildlife group, anybody can capture things. So this is the front page of the app once you've already logged in, and I think most of you would have seen this last time, but you can see some of activities have been transferred over if they were previously captured in the Kent landscape tool. I would ask those of you, though, who do have projects to still have a look, if this is an example, because you'll see, well, in this one, Old Chalk, New Downs, we have got the habitats, and we've got the habitats delivered against. I don't know whether there were any NBS solutions in there, but that probably wasn't a data field in the previous database, so it hasn't been put in. Turtle friendly zones, that's not necessarily going to be habitat specific, so that's okay. But I think everybody who has a project that's been is already in here, Kent Wildlife Trust, for example, you'll need to have a look at them and just make sure the data, if there's any additional data to add. So again, this Romney Marsh one, habitat delivered against and nature-based solutions delivered against. I'm sure there were plenty of things there that you did that would be relevant. So there's probably a bit more data to add on here. The other thing I would say is that we're looking to understand projects that have happened in the last 10 years. It may be that an organization's strategy has changed, so you may no longer be pursuing that kind of project, but that doesn't mean that we aren't still interested in the fact that the work happened. And we still would want to understand what that was. So please don't remove them just because they're not perhaps current or whatever. We are trying to capture the last 10 years. Now, here's the man himself. Robbie, hello.
Hello.
Good. I just thought I'd dive into your app. We've just started having a look at it, and I was just saying that there may be a bit of data to be still added to the ones that have been transferred. For example, this one from KWT, where the habitats delivered against and the nature-based solutions are not completed, and also that even if projects are subsequently no longer part of strategy, we still want to know that they happen, so they shouldn't be removed. We still want to capture that data. But I'll just stop there. So Robbie, in terms of this, it's all live. Is there anything you'd like to tell us about that we need to know in terms of anything that's changed from testing or anything like that?
No, nothing's changed from testing. We've just smoothed some things out. All the test projects should be removed. We've left in the ones that people have added as genuine projects during the testing period. So, for example, me and Alexa added a few projects with a few people. They were genuine projects. They won't have been removed. It's only the ones that obviously have test in the title or that were like covering massive areas that were just squares that were clearly not real projects that we removed. But apart from that, I think it should all be working fine. All the major bugs should have been resolved. And I'm recording the tutorial demo-y videos today, and we'll send them over, so they'll be live on the welcome page today.
Okay.
I think that's probably it.
Brilliant. So anybody who wants a bit of a quick walk through how to capture things can have a look on there. Great. Okay, any questions for Robbie? Anybody? No? All ready to capture projects? Share it with other people to capture projects that they've already done? Yeah, so we're looking to let this run kind of in. I think we'll keep it. We're going to maintain this application, but we're really looking to try and get as much as we can on before the end of March. Is that the right time frame, Robbie, that you're thinking of?
Yeah, it's the end of March, and then that's when we're starting the kind of prioritization, the spatial prioritization work, which means all this data will be used then. It will continue running, I believe, but that's the point where we'll start using it. So it's kind of a speak now, forever hold your peace, at least for the next year, because otherwise we're not going to be able to have it in time to use it.
Right. So just maybe talk a little bit, Kirsty, I'll come to you in a minute, but maybe just explain a bit about the what the spatial priorities bit is, because I think that's when people will really understand how this is all going to come together.
Yeah, it's not 100% nailed down yet, to be honest. So we've got our data and evidence mapping group like this one, which is kind of me, Liz, Milne from KCC, and Tony Witts from KMBRC kind of leading the mapping work. But we've already made our APIP, which you've probably seen, which is the areas.
Yeah, we just had a quick look through it earlier. Yeah.
Cool. So we've got that, and then the next question is, how do we link that up and identify areas for priority for conservation and nature recovery across Kent? So we'd use the APIB as like our base, and then it's how do we expand that? How do we connect it up? How do we identify areas that aren't included within the APIB that are of very high priority for Kent? And so obviously a big part of that is where is conservation currently happening? Where have we currently got nature recovery projects? So having a really clear picture of what's happening in the county currently is going to be really important in identifying those hotspots for nature recovery, and also importantly identifying the hotspots where nature recovery isn't happening, which we can then overlay with where it should happen and know these are the areas of priority. Why is it not happening in this particular area? And then accelerating that process on from there. We're also going to have a second app, which is going to be very similar, which is just for everyone. So it's a much more broader, less technical one of just where do you think the prioritization should be? So theoretically, you could go on and just draw around your village, your parish, your back garden. It could be that detailed, or so we've got a picture of where everyone in the county, where the stakeholders want conservation to be prioritized in a very broad brush sense, with probably a few questions of why. But that's again going to be useful in that kind of we've got the where everyone thinks it should be, where we think it should be, and where it's currently happening. We can overlay all of those and determine the areas that could become of particular importance, which is the second element of the mapping. You're muted, Alexa.
You're muted, Alexa.
Oops, I'm muted. Sorry, I was just saying it's a lot to put together. So we've got the APIB, which we've published. We're capturing all of this from this Actions for Nature will give us an idea of obviously where it's already happening. That will then help us with the spatial planning of, I guess, trying to build on existing progress in order to identify these ultimate other area that we're looking for, the areas that could become important for biodiversity. Yeah. So, so I guess, folks, that is the thing that we really want to get as much of a picture of where nature recovery has already occurred, to really get this good understanding of how that looks spatially, so that we can start to come with this kind of ultimate map, which will be the one that's really the key part of the LNRS, these areas that could become important for biodiversity. So we really need your help to get as much data captured onto this and get as detailed a picture as possible of what has happened. Okay, any questions for Robbie? Yeah. Okay. Well, Robbie, well, I look forward to seeing things getting captured, and I guess that will be, yeah. I know it's a lot to ask, folks, but I think hopefully, we can see the benefit of putting it on there is that it will help to inform this ultimate spatial strategy of where we focus these areas that could become important for biodiversity, which is really, really where we want to get to. All right, well, seems like everybody knows how it's going to work. And there is, if you have any questions, then obviously let me know or let Robbie know. But there will be that little training video, which should give you details on how to get there. And it really is, I think, relatively easy to follow. And just put as much data as you can on there. Even if it's not absolute perfection. And you can export files, can't you, Robbie, from particular, so from if you've got a sort of a shape file and things like that you want to export, you can export that. And the details of that are in the instructions as well.
Yeah, when you go to draw your boundary, it will give you an option of upload a file or draw boundary. So if you already have your boundary drawn in a shape file or anywhere in Landstack, as in LandApp GIS, you can use that.
Okay,
that will
Kirsty.
Be
sorry, yeah, thanks. Kirsty, sorry, I've been...
Yeah, just a quick question. It's probably in the agenda somewhere, but what's your sort of deadline for this, for all the data? What's your hoped for deadline, and what's your sort of real deadline?
It is end of March, because
End
of
of
how fast this process has to move, given our
Yeah.
very short time scale. We're using the data from the end of March. April is when we're starting the mapping work, so we need it then, really.
Okay. Thanks.
And there's a question in the chat from Vicky, which is, what about areas that are important now but under imminent threat? So I guess, Vicky, we've said that, at the moment, well, we can't go retrospective with the LNRS. It is only, we're going as quickly as we can, but that is, that I guess these are current issues. We can't necessarily, well, the LNRS is not the mechanism through which we can address that. But I guess we're hoping that in the future this will help to avoid direct action away or direct activity away from the most important areas from a biodiversity and habitat perspective.
I think that's also plays into the other stakeholder engagement, the app that we're doing, which is the spatial prioritization of this is what's currently happening on the ground, and then the next one is where do you think it should be, and there's no reason why on that you couldn't highlight an area up for development and say this should be in the LNRS because it's up for development. Whether we can use that under the guidance is another question, but I think having the most complete picture is always a good thing for us.
Yeah. Peter, you look like you've got your hand up. Yeah, go on, you go.
Just very quickly, Robbie, when you talked about being able to, or whatever, exporting shape files, does this mean that those of us that have put together schemes, have got schemes via the Land app or something like that, can export them lock, stock and barrel onto your system?
You can export the boundary, so you can use that, so you don't have to draw it out again. You will have to fill in the questions because we don't have a way of getting that info from Land app, although we tried. It wasn't something we could do in the timescale, but it saves you a big job not having to draw around your parcels. And as we kind of discussed, Peter, the info from Land app is quite well aligned, so especially the habitat stuff. So if you've got your Land app up on one screen, you can kind of flick back and forth, and that might make life even easier, as well as being able to use the boundary.
Okay. So yeah, I think the thing is, yeah, up until end of March. So really to push for that data, please, to be uploaded. And please share that with anybody else in your organization. I mean, I can't guarantee that everybody from every organization is on this meeting invite. So please, be a real pity if you've spent lots of time and effort, worked with lots of landowners and farmers, and it's not captured. So if we can get that on, that would be great. Okay. Any last questions, Kirsty? You still got your hand up, or is that just a relic from before?
Sorry, it's a relic.
Okay, no problem. Super. Okay. So that is that, I think, Robbie. And we did have a quick look at the APIB before, and there weren't any questions, I guess. Anthony was just making the general point about how there's an awful lot of information for landowners to take in. So I think we know that, and that's something we need to take into account for the workshops. But again, anybody, if you've got any thoughts, welcome to feed them back to me or to Robbie. Super, thank you very much, Robbie. I think that's been a lot of work, so I look forward to seeing all the projects pop up on there. Great, thank you. Okay, so I'll move on to the workshops, and I think quite a few of you have been at the workshops or are planning to come to the workshops. So we've had 4, and they've all been. They've all had their own character, but they've been well attended, and we've had some really fantastic discussions with people. The format has been that in the morning we look at what are the pressures for nature. So that could be from development, it could be from agricultural or other land management practices, it could be from climate change, it could be, whatever people think is, having an impact on wildlife or nature that they've seen. And I'd say that the majority of that, actually, there's been an awful lot of discussion about climate change. as well as a lot of discussion about development pressures, what that causes in terms of fragmentation of habitat, loss of habitat, and also an awful lot about then kind of the related sort of human impacts, disturbance and ground nesting birds, that sort of thing. So it's been really interesting to see, and I guess I've been amazed by how much climate change and alien species and that sort of thing have featured. And then in the afternoon, we talk about kind of what is it that people would like to see, what is the wish list that they would like to see in terms of outcomes for nature. So that can be as broad as, you know, a much greater abundance and diversity of species, down to, you know, restoration or recovery of healthy populations of ringed plovers, because that would indicate, you know, less human disturbance and more habitat available for them, or something like that. So it can be as broad or as specific as people want. We've got the last one next week, and then we are going to publish a report on that so that you can see just the raw data of what everybody had to say, and then we will be bringing it down, bringing it down to a short list. So again, in your pack, and there was, we've developed a kind of criteria for shortlisting, and that is here. Just not going to go through it. Hold on a minute while my clock strikes. All right, there we go. So this is all the approach to how we're going to develop the shortlist, and it gives you the criteria by which they'll be assessed. So it will be included if the potential priority contributes to national environmental objectives, or if it addresses pressures or opportunities identified for the strategy area. If it relates to a co-benefit rather than to habitat or species, then it will be excluded. So that's something like, could be something about, for example, more access to green space. And does it relate to a specific site? So that will be excluded or amended to be a more general priority. So someone might have put a specific ancient woodland to be protected. That might be a more general priority about ancient woodland being in better condition or something like that. So that may be something that we can amend, but we will keep those ones that are excluded so that we understand what they are, because they're obviously important to people. So it's just that the way that the LNRS regs are defined means that there's, you know, certain things that we can include, but it's important that we understand these other issues as well. So this sets out again how the shortlisting will be done, sort of the different steps that will be gone through, and gives you a whole load of information. I don't propose to go through it now, but on the website there is a survey so that you can provide your feedback on this cross shortlisting criteria, because we obviously want to make sure that it is a good criteria, that it's not inadvertently going to be you know, biased towards one lot of outcomes versus another. So if you could have a look at it, and then there's a survey on the website where you can complete a little feedback form to give us your thoughts on that criteria. So yeah, please do have a look at that, because the more brains that are looking at this, the better. So that will be happening. We'll be working through the shortlisting in March, with a view to then, you know, producing, getting together a sort of a shortlist for the next stage of works. So it's a fast and furious project with a lot of data being assimilated. So yeah. It's particularly challenging, I think, but there's also obviously technical groups also providing us with advice and support. So there's also a question of how we bring together the kind of technical advice, and then, you know, all of this understanding gained from what's important to people across Kent and Medway. So there's an awful lot to bring together. So I'll just pause there, because I guess whilst these workshops have been, I think, been a great experience, and anyone who's been at the workshop is welcome to chip in here. We've had a few landowners at each one, but we've not had a lot, and I can completely understand they don't necessarily have basically a day to give up to workshops. So I would like to devise a sort of mini workshop kind of approach. And I think the other issue is around timing, sort of conscious of what Anthony's saying about there's an awful lot happening at the minute about SFI. I also think probably landowners want to have something specific to look at. So we mentioned that there's going to be this more spatial work, and we're also going to have another set of workshops around measures. So measures are actions. So in other words, what can we do to create this habitat, support these species that we're shortlisting? And it seems to us that that would be the place where landowners are going to have the most interest and most knowledge to share with us, because they've obviously been developing habitat for many years. I can see Kirsty nodding, so that's encouraging. So I'm thinking that we will do these workshops as a sort of something in probably June or July, which is looking at getting maybe we'll be down to a bit of a short list then of what we're looking at in terms of habitat and species, but then specifically understanding what kind of measures or activities farmers could undertake and want to undertake to support these species, because I think that'll give us really valuable information. So if we're taking nightingales or turtle doves or whatever, obviously we've probably got a lot of landowners already supporting them, but maybe there's others elsewhere. So we can really understand what's that interest and appetite for that. So my idea is that we would maybe run workshops around that, and then, but I realize that might not be all that enough of an attraction to landowners. So I'm wondering if you could give me some recommendations or suggestions for how to engage landowners and potentially involve them or set up an activity where this is a part of it. So maybe an hour and a half of activity, but there are some other things that farmers could do or would value. So that maybe is farm walks or talks from experts or something, more of a normal kind of farm visit, kind of farm walk kind of day, but just perhaps grabbing some time over lunch to work through this with them, or a breakfast meeting, whatever. So I just like to spend, maybe 5 minutes getting your ideas and just hearing your thoughts. I'm going to try using a whiteboard just so that everybody, because there's quite a lot of people in this call, and I'm not sure if everyone's going to be able to, just be a good experiment to see if we can capture some thoughts here. So I'm going to put on a whiteboard. I don't know if you've used a whiteboard before, but it should just load up, and you just go on it. Oh, when you finish getting all my instructions on what to do, and there you could grab a post-it note and just write it up and put any suggestions down for what you might suggest, or if you want to wait and shout out at the end, that would be fine. But I'll just give 5 minutes if you could just jot down a couple of ideas in terms of activities that you think would work, and then particularly what sort of topics or areas you think farmers or landowners would value, farms to visit or topics to hear about. So that hedge laying or whatever is going to be appropriate, I guess, particularly around June and July, when maybe other things that are happening as well. So I live in hope that someone will go for it. Put a couple of suggestions up.
Mine's still loading at the minute. It's not letting me access it.
Yeah, and Alexa, I tried putting a post on, it said it was an error.
Yeah, same.
And then it reloaded.
Oh no.
And now it's just loading.
Now it's got a massive one. Oh dear. And now how do I get out of that as well? Stop sharing. Okay. Well, why don't you just tell me what you think? Let's go back to the old-fashioned.
Right.
I've got some messages here.
I
Let me
can
have
note
a wee
these
look.
down if you want me to, Alexa. It's fine.
Go for it.
I'll jot people's suggestions down.
Okay. Dear, yeah, Adira tool. So Kirsty, go for it.
Sure. I'm probably going to say what Ellen's going to say too, but I mean, I think, you know, someone mentioned earlier about time, tagging some of these meetings onto existing events, just grabbing time, like you said, over lunches or, you know, breakfast or whatever it is. I know Ellen's got some events coming up, and we've probably got other events. So really just coming along to those probably.
Yep. Super. So please, yeah. Ellen, on you go.
Yeah, I was going to say the same as Kirsty, and also I think if you've got like a bit of a draw, like a speakers, I think obviously habitat's a really good thing. So if you've got some farmers that you know have got like a really good habitat that they've been working on, do a specific farm walk there that they can kind of showcase what they're doing, kind of get people involved, and then that kind of highlights it. This is the type of thing you want to show. If you can get a speaker along, I don't know what budget you've got, or if there's anyone who would volunteer, like that's always a really good draw, having a speaker. Yeah, I think that would be a good way forward. And food. I think everyone loves food.
I have not an unlimited budget, but I do have a budget, so I can certainly help with food and you know, speakers, you know, up to a point. I know some speakers can be very expensive, but certainly, so it would be good to get suggestions of speakers that are you know, I think your suggestion of relevant habitat sort of development chance to see that, I think that would really make sense as well, because this is what we're obviously hoping farmers and landowners are going to help us with. Anthony.
Yeah, sorry. My experience of farmers is that I'd be interested to see what the landowners and farmers have to say on this group. I don't know how many they're involved. I was trying to work out who there are.
They're not, because this is all advisors, although we do have Peter Hall, who is definitely, and this got a message in here too.
Yeah. Well-known Peter, yeah. Because I represent several kind of hats on here, from my landowning type of farmer perspective, to get people along, there's two things. I think half a day is more important than a whole day. I think it is very hard to take a whole day out at the moment.
Oh no, I completely understand, yeah.
The other thing is all farmers and landowners are trying to monetize what they've got. They might have a fascinating interest, like what we're trying to do on this estate I run here. Yes, we're improving biodiversity and nature across the estate. How do we monetize that? So any kind of suggestion how that might be actually turned into a monetized situation, I think would actually, you'll suddenly have a lot of landowners and farmers turn up because they're interested to see how they do that. Because yeah, at the end of the day, we're businesses, and how do we link in to help doing what we're doing, but make it financially worthwhile? So I think that's a really important thing to get across if you can, or link in anyway.
And I think, you know, that's another reason why I'm hoping that by June, July, we might know how this links to ELMS, because I guess that is a key monetization mechanism. And that's what we're sort of missing at the minute, the actual detail of how that will happen. So I feel a bit, find it's difficult to, you know, really understandably, as you say, people have got limited time. They can't prioritize something that isn't going to financially benefit them. So that makes sense. So yeah, certainly on the monetization part, I think is going to be important. Peter, I come to you, also asked a question about, is the interface to capture actual data capture or just to inform us as to what is happening? I think if we use this as an opportunity to look at what measures do people want to undertake, that's an actual data input. Because again, just as Robbie was explaining, all of this is kind of trying to match where there's a priority need for habitat with willing landowners, and try to produce some sort of map ultimately which tries to bring all of this together in some way. So it will inform that ultimate design of this this areas of that could become important for biodiversity. But I'm actually, well, it is proposed, and I guess there's a question of whether there's enough capacity for that we would come back again. So we'd gather the data on the measures and actions. We'd come back again in September, and then with these maps, these final maps, these areas that could become important, show those again to the landowners so they can see, right, now we are in that area or not. The reason being that people might volunteer to provide a habitat in this area. Experts might say, well, we need habitat over here, and there's not a Venn diagram. Then we have to sort of try and, you know, decide, well, what would be the next best thing to bring these things together? Because it's a combination of where would be the best possible place with where is the willing landowner to provide that habitat, and trying to marry those up. So yes, it is it's a genuine data capture opportunity, but there may, just because it went onto that map doesn't mean that at the end it's going to ultimately still be in exactly the same, that it would necessarily fall into the map, is all I would sort of caution. So yeah, so there's a real benefit, I would suggest, if you're interested in this kind of nature delivery. Don't know if that helps you, whether you think that's, you know, going to be more encouraging. So we've got a few things in the chat from Claire. Just farm walks are usually interesting. So I think what I'd really like is some suggestions or offers of farm places which are good farms that have good habitat that would be interested in hosting walks. So Anthony, Peter, anybody who is a cluster facilitator, if you'd like to propose, or anybody who's got any landowner engagement that they would like to propose places for farm walks, that would be great. Vicky, I'm talking about farm conference, I'll come back to that. And Claire's saying about crop trial showcases going on in June. So Claire, that would be great if I could find out, if you could tell me who would be running those crop trial showcases. I will, I could get onto them. I think that could be a good one as well. Yeah, so any of those, any other thoughts? But really, I guess what my plea to you is, can you please send me any suggestions, contacts, introductions, and ideally across the county, so that I can, and I think if I get an introduction from you, then, you know, hopefully people will be willing to help out. Vicky's saying ploughing matches. Vicky, I think those are in September. We'll definitely have a stand at the ploughing match. I think it probably depends on the match, but I think it's a good area for visibility, but I don't see me being able to have any kind of long discussions with landowners at those. I've got too many other exciting things to be, or people to chat to. So yeah, we definitely display the stuff, but I don't think we'll be able to have workshops. But someone is welcome to tell me if I'm wrong about that. But I see quite a lot of people on here. So people from RSPB, you know, people from Bumblebee Conservation Trust. So, you know, I'm sure you've all got events on and engagement with landowners. So it'd be really good to get a list of all of those activities. If you could all drop me, even if it's just, you know, in June, we've got these approximate plans. I understand they change, but it would let me build up a picture of what is already happening before I start to try and, you know, I don't want to develop a parallel set of activities. Okay, thank you very much. I think that is essentially all on that front. So that is been quite a lot to cover. I guess I'm just a little bit conscious of the fact there's a lot of me talking here. So is there anything else anybody wants to comment on before I move on to just kind of future activities? Very welcome to. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? All right. So moving on to future activities, our next public kind of engagement is at Farm Expo, where we will have a stand. Is there anybody else going to Farm Expo? Who's got a stand? Any other organisations? Claire Eckley, hurrah. So if you're at Farm Expo and you would like to come and hang around with us at the stand, that would be really helpful, because thank Vicky, great, because just getting introductions, and Peter was a great help Claire has similarly, you know, when we're at shows, because obviously you know people, introducing me to farmers and landowners as they go by. So if you're going to go, it's the 6th of March. Please do come around and see us. And as I say, you're very welcome to be there as long as you like. It's great to have more people. It's more fun for us, and it gives us a good chance to have chats with lots of landowners. So do please feel free to come along. I think it's free to go. So and Warners are going to be there. Gail's also. That's great. Thank you. And yeah, so do come along. That's our next activity. And then I think I mentioned we have got more workshops, so there will be invitations coming out for May workshops. Those are half days. That's kind of for the general public. As I say, I'll kind of develop these mini workshops specifically to focus on landowners alongside that. So I think that is all for now. What I was thinking about, so I'm also very conscious of geography here. So in terms of landowner engagement, we've got exciting new cluster over in northeast Kent. We've got people thinking about clusters in the Isle of Grain, the Hoo Peninsula. We've got the Swale. We've got all of East Kent, East Stour. In the Weald of Kent, we've got Upper Belt, Marden, and then we've got the Darrant Valley. But we still don't really have, I guess we've got the High Weald, and we've got the 1066 cluster, which spans Sussex and Kent. But there's still a bit, I feel that we're not really necessarily covering all areas. We've got Medway Gap developing, so there are clusters appearing, you know, a lot of Kent. But I thought it might be useful to have a discussion at the next meeting, sort of more on a geographical basis. So again, if you could drop me a note if there's a geography that you're particularly active in that you feel that we're not necessarily covering, that would be really helpful. Or an area, and Peter's adding, and Bourton Monchelsea, yes. And Vicky, Thanet is the north, what I'm calling northeast Kent, which is the Thanet one. So that's a huge one. So it'll be really exciting to see that one develop as well. So just, am I missing a cluster? Am I missing a group of farmers? We could have a look at the cluster map, and then we could also just work out how to engage people. You'll know people in the areas where we just don't have engagement yet. So I wanted to divide it up into, so I'll just sort of put people into different groups and can discuss different geographies. But yeah, do please let me know if there's a particular geography you're interested in, or that you have a lot of expertise. And Charlotte, I see you're also going to be at the show, and I guess Sentry, you know, that would be another great source. Charlotte, if you have any events or are aware of events and aware of landowners, I guess that would be another whole group of people that we could tap into. So that would be great. Yeah, so please let me know if you have any particular geographical either gaps or interests. Would be great. And I think that is just about it. Oh, one thing to mention. So we've been approached by, through the workshops, we've had an awful lot of councillors and parish councillors. We've had a specific request from around Canterbury that Canterbury City Council would like to engage with landowners. So if you are a landowner or you work with landowners in that area, if you could drop me a note, I'm going to have a meeting with them. They're developing their own biodiversity strategy. And so that covers not just BNG, but also they have a duty beyond that to promote biodiversity in their area. So I think that is interesting to see councils reaching out more to landowners. I'm sure, you know, some of you may have experienced that before, but that's a specific request. And similarly, down in Folkestone and Hythe had a person who is the cabinet member for environment, who's particularly interested in nature-friendly farming. So I think that's another opportunity there to kind of have an, I don't know what, but work together in a way that, you know, I think it's good to see the councils recognising the importance of nature-friendly farming. So those of you who have projects over or in that area as well, if you would let me know, then I'd be happy to involve you in that discussion as and when it happens. And Helen, I think you're just saying, Helen Pittman saying here that there's discussing a Blean area cluster. So again, anybody on this call who would like to get involved in any of those for the Blean cluster, that would be probably Helen Pittman, and for Folkestone and Hythe area, get in touch with me, and similarly for Canterbury City Council, and I will loop you into any discussions. Okie dokie. Any last thoughts, questions? Anybody still out there? Do you find this useful? Too much information? Give me some feedback on whether or not this is a useful format. You're on mute, Helen, if you are talking to me. Or you're not on mute, but I can't hear you. Oh, you're back.
My headphones behind my head. There you go. I'm just saying I'm finding it really, really useful. So thank you. I'm really getting a lot out of these conversations.
Okay. And Claire's saying it's nice to hear progress. I think that's also one of the issues though, Claire. It's quite hard to keep up. There's so much happening. So anyway, well, thank you very much, all of you, for joining today. Yeah, if you want to drop me a line about any suggestions for how to make it more interactive, maybe I'll have better luck with my whiteboard next time. But yeah, I really appreciate your time and all of your thoughts. So yeah, thank you very much, and I'll see you hopefully at Detling, and if not, in a month's time on the next call. Super. Thank you very much. Thanks all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.